Okay. I'm sorry you don't get to watch Gigi anymore. For some reason, the web camera is not working. But hopefully, we'll get it going. Okay. What's this? Oh.
Not sure.
No. Okay. All right. Nobody's here yet. Okay, let's see. I get some of the strangest suggestions. Okay.
There it is right there.
Yep. One watching. One person made it. Okay. That's probably me. Let's see. This is the old one. Okay. And go to the new live stream. Part 2. Okay. Well, they can watch.
They can watch it after?
Yeah. So, okay, go ahead and continue your story.
All right. So, I interviewed this person. Somebody came to me and said, "Oh, you've got to hear this guy's story." And so I met with him, and he when he was in his 20s, he had come to visit a friend in Cache Valley, and he had just fell in love with the area because he's such an outdoorsman, loves hiking and fishing and snowboarding and skiing, and so this was the perfect place for him. So he just up and moved here. And one fall, he wanted to go on a hike to Mount Naomi, which is one of the taller peaks on the Cache National Forest. And he had planned to go with a buddy. They were going to go in the middle of the week. It can be done it's a hike that can be done in one day, but he kind of wanted to take 2 days because they were going to leave a little late, and he likes to camp. And so he'd planned this, and his friend had canceled on him at the last minute. And like he said, being in his 20s, and he'd been used to being in the mountains alone, so he packed up his stuff and drove to Tony Grove, which is where the base of the trail starts, and headed up. And it gets really high near the tree line, and to explain the area, there's a lot of old pine trees and just brush and lots of boulders, rock fields. So he gets so far, and it's getting late in the day, so he decides he's going to make camp, and he goes off the trail a ways. And because there was a fire burn, which happens quite a bit in August on the Cache, you can't have any fires or anything, so he just packed his some food to eat and a sleeping bag, and he always brought a little book with him to read, just an old ratty book that he would grab off his shelf so that he had something to read with his headlamp. And so he ate and watched the sunset and watched the stars come out and read his book a little bit and then went to sleep. Well, in the middle of the night, he wakes up, and he says he's a really heavy sleeper. It takes quite a bit to get him to wake up. And he wakes up, and he's not sure what woke him up. And he's kind of trying to shake off the cobwebs and realizes that it's really, really quiet, abnormally quiet. That's what he notices first. And then he decides maybe I should just go back to sleep. So he goes back, and he's going to start to go back to sleep, and he starts hearing this whistling sound. And he's really confused because, it doesn't sound like a bird whistle. It sounds like somebody trying to get his attention. And he's trying to find his headlamp and can't find his headlamp. So he puts on his boots because he's like, he wants to be ready for whatever's going on. And all of a sudden he gets hit in the chest with a rock. And it's about the size of a quarter, and it wasn't thrown really hard. It was just tossed at him. And so he's really confused now. Because birds don't throw rocks. And he at this point, he realizes that his headlamp is on his head. So he flips his headlamp on and looks towards where the whistling is coming from. And sitting on the pile of rocks about 15 feet from him is this creature. And he's explaining the creature to me, and it's green grayish in color. If it was standing up, it'd be about 4 feet tall, but it's sitting on its haunches on this pile of rocks. And he explains it to me, and the best way I can explain it to somebody else is, if you remember in Harry Potter what the creatures at the bank look like.
Oh, the goblins.
The goblins is exactly what he explains. It's actually has clothes on, like ratty homemade clothes on, and he is just kind of really in shock because he's explaining how he didn't really believe in paranormal, didn't think much of that kind of stuff, was a very grounded, real world person, and now he's literally face to face with a creature he's never heard of, never,
obviously
seen,
sentient. If it's wearing clothes,
right? Wearing clothes, and it's all of a sudden he notices that its hand is moving behind it, trying to move behind it, and he looks, and the creature has his book in his hand. And it's at that point that he realizes that this creature has been close enough to steal the book from him while he was asleep. And it kind of snaps him out of it. And he hurries and grabs his stuff and heads for the trail as fast as he can. Just as he's about to get to the trail, he trips. All his stuff goes sprawling. He's trying to gather up his stuff. And he starts to hear the whistling again, and it's coming from behind him towards where he'd come from. And he just gets his stuff, gathers up, runs all the way back to his vehicle that was parked, throws his stuff in, and goes. But he just had no idea what it was, what he'd witnessed.
Right.
And he said he'd heard of Bigfoot before, but this was not Bigfoot. But after interviewing him, I kind of did some research on my own, and the creature is actually, it's known all over the world. The Native Americans here had names for it. One of the names was a Pagwaji, which I always say that wrong, but explains these creatures just like that. They like to shoot arrows at you. They like to steal things. They're mischievous. But what's interesting is that when I researched this myself, that this very same creature is seen all over the world. Right. Africa, right. South America, North America, Europe. That's where Europeans get a lot of their
the
belief.
Knockers, the dwarves, the elves.
Yeah, all of that stuff. And so, I think it's interesting that whatever culture there was had these things in their history, and they talked about them, and so it makes you realize that, well, one, it led credibility to this gentleman's story, but also that credibility to other people's stories, that you don't hear things like that as often as, say, Bigfoot or ghosts, but they are out there. Their stories are there. So
that's awesome. I love that story.
Yeah,
so
it's
much.
a good story.
It's I've been studying skinwalkers quite a bit. I am, when I share skinwalker stories, I am very picky. I only share them from Navajos or people around that area. And I've had some really good discussions with a couple of guys on Reddit about it. And I can't show pictures because it's down, but no, it's really interesting. Just, I love hearing the folklore from this area. I mean, I know the European, I know the English really well, but around here it's a little harder to come by.
Well, and part of that is the fact that when it comes to Native American folklore, it was all verbal. It was all passed down verbally. So a lot of it's been lost. Right. And so that does make it a little bit harder.
A little, and plus it's a living religion. It's a living religion. It still exists, and they don't want to share everything about it.
Right.
So,
exactly.
and I kind of try and walk that fine line between respect and getting the information. So it's kind of
exactly
difficult that way.
And it's interesting to me because when you talk to the Native Americans about, for example, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and you say you ask them, is it a real creature or is it a spiritual creature? And their answer is yes. It's both. and that's hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around.
Right.
But yeah, it definitely is. It's interesting to come across. But
it is. I'd love to study that more, and I need to. So, yeah, we've only got Richard here at the moment, and nobody else made it over, I guess, but that's okay. I hope they watch it later. I have a really interesting story, and I don't know if I should share this, but okay, I will. I just won't give names. Okay. I got an old car for my birthday because we needed a car, so my parents got me one. Well, the car had belonged to a young lady who took her life the spring before. And she shared it with her sister, and her sister just couldn't drive it anymore because it reminded her too much of the sister that had died. And so I get the car, and it starts doing crazy things on its own. It tries to lock me out. It won't shift into gear. So I start addressing the girl that had died and talking to her, and those problems went away. Well, if I stop talking to her while I'm driving, if I've gone a long time, then the problems start coming back. You get out of the car while it's running, and she will lock you out. So, and she likes some people driving it and some others not so much.
Right.
So I don't know, I might, I call it by her name. It's not Christine. I won't say her name because anybody that watches this could look it up. But, no, I do call her by that name. And I don't know if that's nice. I guess I don't know if that's disrespectful. I'm wondering about that, but I don't know if but when I talk to her, the things don't happen.
Yeah,
so I don't know. Maybe she's connected to the car. And, I don't know if that's disrespectful, but, it seems to be true.
It seems to work. Yeah. So it's interesting how, it's funny how, just how the universe is with stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think we'd be amazed at how everything is connected. And
people that would talk about these things, about, unknown things that don't happen every day would be labeled as kooks. But now, you look at where science is going, the multidimensional theories that could be, fixed. Yeah, it could explain a lot of the glitch in the matrix. There's other things, the extra dimensions in, unified theory and everything. And, it's just because you can't explain it doesn't mean it's not real. It just means we can't explain it.
It's just unexplained. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why ghosts and UFOs and Bigfoot and everything is just so fascinating to us, is because we're so curious about everything as creatures, basically.
And the whole thing comes from, myths and legends of explaining unknown things. And then you've got the science, and they kind of just go back and forth.
So. Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, and there's a lot of things, too. And I don't know if you've talked about it much on your show, but I've done a lot of studying on the missing 411 stuff. And I've read all of David Paulides' books. I've talked to him several times. I'm friends with him. And that's a good example of where science and the unknown are colliding.
Right.
Because these are real people that are disappearing under really strange circumstances.
Right.
And his whole goal is to trying to get people in the scientific field or in search and rescue and everything like that, to realize that these are different circumstances in which people are disappearing.
Yeah. And the part that concerns me about them is the people that are Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Richard says all fiction is based in truth. And
yes, this is true.
Don't worry, no worries about the joke. It was a funny joke.
Yeah.
But what was I saying?
I don't know.
That that there's somebody that is trying to cover up all of these disappearances.
Right. Yes.
I mean that's obvious and ongoing, and it makes you wonder why and who knows what. And
yeah,
I mean there could be a simple solution, but something is hiding it.
My personal feeling in the research that I've done, especially when it comes to say Bigfoot or UFOs, and I tend to come from a perspective. I don't like to jump to conclusions on stuff.
And
I really try and
David Paulides himself has refused to give
his explanation of what he believes it is until he has proof. But I really believe there's a lot of things, especially in particular with UFOs, that the government knows a whole lot more than they're letting on, and it's just the fact that how many people have seen UFOs, how many people have seen this stuff, and it's so hard to ignore. I mean, it's just really hard to ignore. So.
Right. I haven't seen the new series, Richard. There was one back in the 70s that I used to watch. And that too was based on the Blue Book cases. I really would like to see the new series, but I don't think I have that on my streaming services.
I was watching that at our parents' house right before I came over. I was watching the first episode. It was actually really good, and it's based on the real files that they went through, which was interesting. One, if you're just starting out into understanding UFOs, or if you've been in it for a very long time. There's one show that I tell everybody they've got to see. It's called Unacknowledged, and it's on Netflix right now. And it's really interesting because this gentleman gathered pilots, Air Force people, military people, and they had this big conference where they all told everything that they knew.
Oh yeah.
And it was exactly 1 week before 9/11.
Oh my!
I'm not saying there's any connection, but it happened because after that happened, it was at the press club with international people and the international press. And I'm not saying there's a connection, but it happened 1 week before 9/11, and it was going to become a big thing where everybody was going to talk about it and finally get this out in the open. And because of 9/11, it just disappeared.
There's other things that got shoveled under the rug. 9/11, yeah.
But it's the whole thing. It's on Netflix.
Is it Unacknowledged?
Unacknowledged. That's it. Yep.
That's it.
That's it. Yep. Unacknowledged. It's one of the best documentaries that I've seen, because it's not like they go out and interview, Farmer Joe who saw something in his field which are good too, but these are doctors, scientists, pilots. They've gone to people, credible individuals, and talked about what their experiences with UFOs, their experience with the government, and everything like that. So
see ya. Have a good day.
And so it's really good. It's one of my favorites. In fact, I watch it at least once a week, which is really weird for a documentary, but I just really like it.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, and that's just it. Is you look at people that have had these experiences, and you've got presidents, you've got scientists, you've got all sorts of people, and the point where they try and shame people into silence is kind of gone when you get so much, but. Answers is hard to get. But.
Well, and in that documentary, one thing that really sticks out in my mind is this doctor that's doing it. He was working with when Clinton became president. He was working with Clinton through one of his aides, because when Clinton went in, that was one of his things that he wanted to disclose, UFOs.
Yeah.
And so and all of a sudden, he didn't want to talk about it anymore. And his aide came to the doctor's house and he said, look, he says, we're going to have to not do this anymore. And he's like, why? He's like, he's the president. He said he wanted to do this. Why doesn't he want to do this? And he's like, we have been told that if he continues along these lines, that he's going to end up like JFK. He's
Right.
going to end up dead. And he laughed and he goes, "No, I'm dead serious. I'm telling you, he will disappear." Is what they've been told. So
I've seen interviews with him on late night talk shows about it, and he definitely kind of says there's something there without saying it.
Without saying there's something there. Yeah. And they talk about how the fact of the matter is.
Welcome back, Creighton.
What they talk about a lot about. You think of the president as being the highest of the high, but they get into office and they talk about that there is, X amount of black books and black ops and stuff. And they literally tell the president, you don't have classification to see this. And if the president doesn't have a classification,
who does?
Who does? Yeah.
And that the money we pump into military is absolutely insane.
Oh yeah,
there's so much going on that we don't
crazy.
know.
Oh yeah, it's just insane. But anyway, it's crazy. But I love all of it. In my books, I have cryptids, ghosts, UFOs. In my new book that will be coming out next year, I got the first. I interviewed a gentleman who had a run-in with a it's gone past, but it's the creature from Native American lore associated with a Wendigo.
A Wendigo. Okay, yeah.
And his run-in with it in the Sierra Nevadas.
Oh.
And one night. And it was the first one that I've heard of a lot of stories about the Wendigo, but this was the first one where I actually got to interview somebody who'd had a run-in with one. And that's another one with the Native Americans that is a real or spirit, and it's both. So, yeah.
I love the Native folklore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. The whole thing is pretty amazing. So.
Yeah. My brain just kind of, it's that 7-minute lull.
Yeah, it's the 7-minute lull.
Okay, we covered those.
Yep.
I was trying to make notes this morning and only got 2, but we've covered those.
Yep.
Awesome. I actually had a UFO experience.
Oh, really?
And it was very brief, but it was very clear. It was summer night, and I was stressed out. So I went and I laid back on the trampoline, and I was just watching the stars. And I didn't hear an airplane, but I saw what looked like a small airplane. Well, they fly over all the time because we've got an airport not too far away.
Right.
But I didn't hear it. And so I looked, and in a split second, it disappeared. Like it had flown behind a building, but there's no building there. Yeah. It just disappeared, and I have no clue what that was.
Oh, wow.
It looked like a small aircraft.
Yeah.
No sound, and it just disappeared. But, yeah, that kind of freaked me out.
There's a lot of UFOs in this area associated, in particular with the Wellsville Mountain Range, which is towards the west of Cache Valley. And they say, it might have something to do with the minerals or the, veins of whatever is there. And so, yeah, there's it's just interesting. The more you delve into it, the more rich history that Northern Utah has with the paranormal. It's amazing. I read not too long ago, I got sent to me a gentleman who had sent me a couple pages from when Brigham Young had come north to visit the saints that had settled here, and his scribe or his secretary, it was his journal. And it's all normal stuff. I visited this, group of people, this, that. And then there's 2 sections that are really strange because he talks about how on the northern end of Cache Valley, they came to an ancient well. And they approached this ancient well, and it was full of 3-foot-long salamanders in the well.
Oh, wow.
And they talked about catching the salamanders and how weird they were looking and everything. And then they just go on, and nobody's ever found that well.
It sounds like the giant salamanders they have in China.
Yeah, it sounded like those. Yeah. But nobody's ever found that well. And then he had another section when they ended up at Bear Lake that the pioneers had a couple run-ins with what they called the Bear Lake monster that had taken some sheep, and that was all that was written in the snow. It's just like, by the way,
somebody, this monster came out and ate some sheep
and went back, and but other than that, it's all good up here. It's like, okay,
whatever.
But it's really interesting to read his article or his thing with those highlighted those weird things. But
it's funny because everybody's like, oh, where I live is so boring. Nothing like that happens here. But once you just kind of scratch it, there's another narrator. I won't mention his name, but he had posted on Twitter that he lives like literally 5 minutes from Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh,
he's like, this is the most boring place. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get on there.
Oh, yeah. I would too.
They've got new owners now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I don't know. I'd love to get on there and investigate.
Oh yeah, it's kind of that whole area is just insane with stuff. Yeah. If you live out in the Uintas or towards Vernal, they said either you have one or two UFO experiences or you haven't lived there for 5 months. That's the only two things that happen, and that they have UFO, Bigfoot, Skinwalker Ranch is there. And the high Uintas, which is not only they lose. It seems like they lose a Boy Scout every other year. Yeah, there was one in particular which is in the missing 411. The Scouts were camping in a bowl where there's only one or two ways out. You have to hike up and get out. And father-son went down to the lake to go fishing early in the morning. The son got his leg wet, fell in the lake. And he says, I'm going to go back to camp and change my socks. And the trail goes directly from the lake back to the camp. And he disappeared there.
Oh, my gosh.
Between. And they looked forever, and they never found anything of him.
Yeah.
And to this day, they still haven't found anything. And there's no way for this young man to have left without seeing the camp and seeing. It's just amazing. It's just strange. Like, it's back to the walking around the corner and disappearing
just
kind
disappearing.
of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's crazy, insane. So I got distracted for a minute. But no, I mean, anywhere you go, there's just under the surface, people try and hide it, but it's there. It's there. And I've had some interesting experiences ghost hunting. I accidentally brought home a very grumpy guy from the Ogden train station. Oh. And Emma was sleeping out on the couch. She's my youngest. And she woke up to his face like right there looking at her. And she was not happy. And he was here for a couple months.
Oh, yeah.
And his favorite trick was to knock on the bathroom door when you were showering, which is very unnerving when you're home alone.
Oh, I would imagine so, yeah.
And he'd wake us up by, like tapping our arm or tapping our leg until, finally it's like, okay, go home. You're not, but...
Yeah.
You got to be careful about stuff like that.
Yeah, you do. We had an incident not very long, a couple weeks ago, where something had come home with me. We think it came from Grandma and Grandpa's house and was there for a couple days, waking up Annie and irritating the cats. Like, for example, just yesterday I went to work. The cats were asleep on the bed. I went to work. I came home and Harley is just bawling his head off, and I can't find him. And he was locked in the garage. He had somehow been locked in the garage. Which there's no way that he got in the garage.
Right.
But just a few things. So yeah, definitely. You got to be careful when you're out and about because they can.
Yeah.
Follow you
watch
home.
That one. So. Yeah. Well.
Awesome.
We're right on an hour here. So.
Sweet.
Thank you so much for coming out and doing this with me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. I'm going to just throw a plug out there if that's okay.
Absolutely.
My first book, Stranger Bridgerland. Second book is Beyond Stranger Bridgerland.
I'll make sure the links are in the comments.
Right. Both can be found on Amazon. I have a new book coming out next year. My website is strangerbridgerland.com, all one word. There's a place there to check out where I'm going to be, different places. And also, if you want to contact me with a story or with a lead, you can also, there's a place to do that there too. And so
I'll put that all down below in the comments when I'm done here. So
awesome. Thanks you guys so much. It's been fun.
Thanks. That went quick.
Yeah, it does. It goes by really quick. I love talking about it.
That's awesome, Night Companion. That's great. Thank you guys so much for coming. And I'm so excited to get my 1,000 subscribers. And I just finished my first audiobook. And I'm going to do I'm working on his second book as an audiobook. And I'll let you guys know when I get that one up. So thanks so much. Bye-bye.